Hey guys, this is the problem with Superman. Actually, let's be real. There's multiple problems with the 2025 version of Superman. The first is that it's simply just overstuffed. There's so much happening in this movie that it's almost hard to describe, but I'm going to try and do so anyway. Partly because I'm paid by the word. Super spoilers, by the way. Superman follows a few narrative threads. There's the central conflict of Superman battling Lex Luthor, of course, which is split into both the physical, as Luthor tries to literally kill Superman, and the more mental game of Luthor attempting to dirty Superman's public image. That public image is tied to a conflict between two fictional countries that I'll dig into in a moment. Supes himself is dealing with his potentially fractured relationship with Lois Lane, as well as exactly what it means to be a literal alien in a hostile world. As a hero, he's joined by the trio of Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific, otherwise known as the Justice Gang, who themselves have their own conflicts, both over how tactful they are in handling situations like massive kaiju attacks, and even their name. One of the less humorous running gags in the movie, by the way. As Clark Kent, Supes has Lois as well as Jimmy Olsen and several other members of the Daily Planet whom we barely have time to meet. Jimmy has his own subplot with Luthor's girlfriend Eve. Oh, and I completely skipped over Luthor's henchman, one of whom is revealed to be a clone of Superman because this is a silly movie deserving of an equally silly twist. I'd say that about covers it, but I feel like I'm still skipping over several plot beats. It's a chunky film, even at just 2 hours and 10 minutes. Delving into more specific issues, I feel like this iteration of Superman is weirdly emotionless. Not the character himself, he's got emotion to spare, but rather the film surrounding him. I think a big issue lies in Ma and Pa Kent. They're just not really a huge part of the film, and when they are around, they're a bit cartoonish for my tastes, even given the generally silly tone of the film itself. Our first scene of Ma Kent is her being incredibly animated during a phone call with Clark. That scene immediately sets us up to treat these characters as a bit of a joke when they should be treated with relative seriousness. After all, these are the characters whom Superman will turn to in the final moments of the film as his true parents. They are essentially what made him the upstanding dude he is today. Hell, they're the emotional core of the film when you really step back and look at it. That doesn't mean we necessarily need more of them, although that would have helped, but that we needed a better grasp on their characters outside of that one sweet but brief moment between Clark and Pa Kent. I mean, think about it. The central conflict once the film gets going is Clark contending with the revelation that his parents sent him to Earth in order to essentially take control of it and be its God King. In his first sequence, he uses their alien speechifying to calm himself, only for that emotional control to be ripped away after Lex Luthor and the engineer salvage the broken video message and reveal the lost half's nefarious, message. Then a bunch of stuff happens, and in the end, Supes once again utilizes images of his parents in order to calm himself during the healing process. Except now it's Ma and Pa Kent that he's watching. It's a great bookend for the film, but one that's undercut because we simply don't have the same connection to the Kents as we did in, say, the original Superman from 1978. Add to that, James Gunn does a very James Gunn thing by creating a cheap emotional anchor in Krypto. Not the currency, the dog.
Here's Johnny!
At this point, it's a natural part of Gunn's playbook to include a cute animal for the audience to have their emotions hang on. In the case of Superman, though, I don't think it entirely works. It's hard to say exactly why, especially for someone like me who loves dogs. I think the most likely culprit is the overstuffing of the narrative, which has cheapened a lot of what should have been strong emotional payoff. Another element that felt strangely hollow emotionally was the romance of Lois and Clark. Like with the Kents, I wouldn't say that this is a completely lost cause or anything, but it does ring hollow enough to draw attention. In this case, I think the big issue is that we simply haven't seen this relationship grow. As with most of the film's emotional heft, this dynamic is presented as something for the audience to catch up with, rather than take time and watch unfold. Superman is also a pretty visually lackluster film, which is a bit of a surprise given Gunn's previous work. Cinematographer Henry Brom seems to have gone less the route of his work on Guardians of the Galaxy Volumes 2 and 3 or The Suicide Squad, and instead pulled on more of the middling sauce he employed in The Flash.
Oh my God!
It's a striking issue, especially when compared to the aesthetic maximalism present in the Snyder films. That's not to say that Superman looks like complete garbage. It's still a well-produced, professional film with a hodgepodge of especially gorgeous shots, but those shots are in no way dominant. Instead, the majority of the film looks fairly plain. Not ugly, not beautiful, just very much there. I'm not sure if that entirely makes sense, but if you've seen the trailer, then you can probably see what I'm getting at. If you felt that trailer was lacking in shot composition and have yet to see Superman, then you'll be unsurprised to discover that the issue persists in the final product. Now, I'm going to dig into some stuff that I really don't want to talk about because the comments will just be a nightmare, but gosh darn, James Gunn really twisted my arm with this one. The central conflict of Superman is based around how Supes recently dealt with a situation between two warring countries, Boravia and Jarhanpur. Despite origins in the comics, these two places are pretty thinly veiled allegories for Israel and Palestine. And no matter where you fall politically, I think it's safe to say that the way Gunn portrays the conflict is extremely simplistic. This comes off as inadvertently ironic, given Superman's initial problem is his own simplistic view of the war between these fictional countries. Of course, where and how you would extrapolate on this conflict in a film this silly and short is difficult to say. Dig too deep into the intricacies of this war and you risk losing the audience and undermining the narrative, but going too far in the opposite direction makes it feel almost as if there's an agenda at play to vilify one side over the other. That, I think, is the case here. Neither Boravia nor Jarhanpur are given much identity beyond one being pretty objectively evil, while the other seems pretty objectively good, with any nuance or even culture really just pushed aside in favor of narrative simplicity. The last big negative for me is the sheer cartoonishness of it all, specifically how the humor can in some ways take away from the more serious elements. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a definitively Silver Age take on the character, and as such I do expect a fair bit of silliness. However, there's something to be said about a light touch with comedy in a film attempting to portray a dramatic conflict. For example, the tale of an immigrant coming to terms with what makes him belong in an alien world, or a world-ending threat being prevented despite overwhelming odds. It's these stories which are often at odds with James Gunn's humor. Ma Kent being portrayed as a cartoon character is my go-to example, but there's a pervading sense of humor throughout that nullifies a lot of the emotional weight of the film's more harrowing or personal moments, such as when Superman gives a beautiful monologue to Lex Luthor, only for Krypto to beat the ever-loving crap out of Luthor in a moment built for laughs. It just kind of saps the drama out of it. Having said all that, there's plenty of good to glean from Superman, and honestly, a lot of it has to do with all of that aforementioned silliness. I love that James Gunn went with a classic Silver Age style, complete with bright colors, sunny exteriors, and some positively insane set pieces. The big one that epitomizes what I enjoyed has to be Supes escaping from Lex Luthor's pocket dimension. While doing so, he's aided by Metamorpho, whose weird green kiddo Superman has to save while also contending with a freaking black hole. The whole sequence, plus junk food moments like the kaiju fight, are definitely what I came to see Superman for. I also love the earnestness of it all, and not just when it comes to David Corenswet's aw shucks interpretation of Superman. On the other side of the pendulum is Nicholas Hoult's Lex Luthor, who is unapologetically evil and chock full of outrageous villainy. I mean, come on, the guy has an army of literal monkeys trolling Superman online. The dude's off his rocker, and I am frankly here for it. Superman as a film is simply insane. I can't say it all worked for me. Obviously it didn't. I just went through a bunch of stuff I didn't like. But I can say I was thoroughly entertained, and I'm pretty excited for what Gunn has in store for his new DC universe. But what about you? If you've seen the film, what's your opinion? Did you have similar issues, different issues, or no issues at all? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you so much for watching ScreenRant.